So we're going to skip our typical introductions and everything because we've met multiple times. I think we all know each other at this point. You probably just got that notification about the recording. So just a quick reminder that this session will be recorded. And then just a few quick housekeeping items to try and mute yourself when you're not speaking. And yeah, I don't think you need to really introduce yourself and your role every time you speak because we all know each other now. So just a reminder, so my name is Jesse Spicer. I'm an informatics specialist with PHC. I'll be doing the kind of demo today and talking through some of the things we've discussed in our previous sessions, like that auto text, looking at the vein mapping. So just kind of going over those workflows since this session is meant to be somewhat of a validation session. And then my colleague, Doris, will also be starting off just asking a few questions about some order sets. So that's basically what we're going to be going over today. So I'll just get right into it. So I'll pass it over to Doris. Doris just had a few questions about some of the order sets work that she's doing currently.
Good morning, Dr. Foltz. Thanks for joining us today. I just have a quick question about the net new power plans that you requested during our GAP session, the vascular surgery first rib resection post-op orders, and the antiplatelet module, anticoagulant module, and the varicose vein day surgery post-op, and the vascular surgery clinic outpatient order set. I was just wondering, in terms of design for the content, is there anything you need help with, or how are those coming along? Is there anything you want me to send your way just to help with the content feedback?
Yeah, I haven't worked on the first rib order set yet. I do have the orders that we typically use. So I wonder if I just write out our order set. If I send that to you, would that be suitable for you to kind of generate a power plan? Would that work?
Yes. If you can just even send it in point form on like a Word document, that'll be perfect.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was all for me. And I think we're meeting next week. So with some of the net new plans that I've created for vascular surgery. So if you send me what you have for like the Word document for the first rib or antiplatelet or anticoagulant, I can start working on those before our session so we can review them during our design session next week.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Doris. That was nice and quick. So yeah, so let's just move right into the demo. I think I'll just hop right into the system and we can kind of get started. And Dr. Foltz, feel free to kind of ask questions as I move along. I'll just be touching on some of the things that we've discussed last time and then just doing a bit of a quick kind of validation demo in the system. So I'm going to start off kind of where you would start in your workflow. So you'd have some kind of patient list. Right now, I've just had this patient list. So this represents the VGH Renal Vascular Access Clinic. So this is just pulling in all the patients that currently have an encounter that uses this location, VGH Renal VA. So that's our agreed upon vascular access clinic location for VGH. So you can see this list of patients here. So essentially you'd start off, you'd kind of find the patient that you want to do some documentation on. So right now we're just going to use this VGH Renal Test VAC patient. And you would just double click to open up their chart. So right when you open the patient's chart, you'll see the demographic information populate. I know you've used PowerChart before, so I'm going to skip kind of the basic, I guess, explanations of PowerChart, etc. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to our workflow M page and review some of the information on the patient's chart. So again, here you might just look over some of their past documentation. For the purpose of this demo, I want to focus on the documents. So again, we were talking a lot about, let's move my little Zoom thing here. We were talking a lot about that vein mapping document and basically making it so you'd be able to view that information as you're doing your assessment. So here you'll see I've uploaded a few of them just as I was doing some testing on this patient. This patient actually doesn't have that much documentation. I'm going to pull up another patient in a bit that has a lot more just to show you how you can filter the documents. Right here, though, there's not too many, and there's basically the important ones right here. So essentially, you would find your VGH renal VA vein mapping. So that's kind of what we agreed to actually title this note, and this would be uploaded by Sophia, basically. So Tomas would kind of, print this off, mark it up, and then he would pass it off to Sophia. she would essentially upload it into this patient's chart, and then it would be here for you to quickly look at it. So essentially you just find it, you click on this little view image button here, and it will actually pull up this image. So this is kind of a nice window where you can like manipulate it a little bit. So if you want, you can zoom in, and then you can just use your cursor and click and then just kind of move around. So if you wanted to just, view Tomas's markups in detail, you could zoom in and you can kind of use this to formulate your assessment. So you can view it that way. And then once you're finished reviewing it, you can just click this little back button up here, and it'll kind of bring you back into the patient's chart where you can continue reviewing the information. Now, I quickly wanted to show you, for example, let's just say, I'm just going to look up another patient that I know has a lot of documentation. So let's say you want to find this document in a patient that has a lot of previous information. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of show you how you can utilize your filters to kind of narrow down and find the document in an easy way. So they might have a long list of documents here. If you go to this change filter button and you select vascular surgery documentation, it's going to narrow down the list, and it'll only show you documents that fall under the vascular surgeon. They're tagged.
Could you show me how to do that again, Jesse?
Of course, yeah. So basically,
change filter.
You'll go to this documents, then you'll see this little change filter button. It'll show you what current filter you have. I think your default filter will actually be this vascular surgery documentation, so you probably won't even have to change it. But just so you know, you click this change filter, and then you can see a variety of different filters here. And so you can select multiple ones if you want, but right now I just went with this vascular surgery documentation. And once you click apply, it'll narrow down that list. And you can kind of—
Can I stop you there for a second, Jesse?
Of course, yep.
On my system at Lionsgate, the documents will come up. Like if you go to the panel on the left, there's a blue panel and it says documentation. Keep going down.
Right here, right?
Yeah, so I usually click on that, and then so where it says display, it currently says vascular. Usually what it'll say is physician all for me, all physician notes.
Physician notes, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if this could be entered under the physician that will be seeing him as a physician note, just because then it really limits the number of, it'll always be there and easy to find and not be lost. So I'm just wondering, when Sophia enters it, could it be entered under the vascular surgeon as a note by them? Or would that have to be done by the surgeon?
So typically when something is done that way, it would have to be done by the surgeon. Now, just so I understand, so you'd want Sophia to essentially enter in your name when uploading that document?
Well, I just find I typically use this document view, this all physician notes, and then it kind of limits it to, like, that's typically what I want, what I look at when I'm seeing a patient. So if it was easy to have it entered as a physician note, then I would say that'd be awesome. If it's really hard to do, then let's not do it. We'll just keep it as you say, with just changing that display to vascular. That'd be fine.
Yeah, so I guess there's a few things to consider. So one reason that we went with this vascular surgery progress note type when uploading it in the work queue monitor, so basically making it a PDF in the system essentially, is that type is not distributed. So some note types are like distributed via Accelerus or other systems, and we wanted to make sure that this note would not be distributed in that way. So that's one reason we went with a vascular surgery progress note. I'm just trying to kind of think it through. So essentially you're saying that you'd rather go to this documentation view to find.
Well, no, it's just that's the way I've typically done it, but I'm happy to if it just means learning the other way, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just gonna open up the advanced filters here and take a look. Because I believe here, now Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe here can you find that same vascular surgeon filter? You can still set this up. Yeah,
it might be under, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So technically, yes, Dr. Folds, you could, if you did want to come here, you could essentially set the filter there, and then you would be able to narrow it down that way. Save.
You can apply it as well.
now. Okay, nice. So that could work. So if you made that advanced filter, Dr. Folds, you just have to do that once, and then it would essentially save as a personal filter here that you could use.
Okay, that's helpful.
And so that's totally fine. Like you can certainly do it that way as well. I guess initially I was thinking the end page just because you'd already be here kind of reviewing the patient's information. But honestly, if you're used to doing it that way, I see no problem in finding it in that way. Because essentially you'll have a similar view here. I guess this view, it actually does have the same functionality. So you can still zoom in and out. So you can still kind of look through the image. So it's basically the same. It's just a slightly different window when it comes to the view. But yeah, I think that can work as well.
All right, thank you.
Just a quick question, there's Thomas. Does it change how or where Sophia scans it to?
No. So yeah, so good question, Thomas, and I should clarify that. So basically, regardless of how Dr. Folds used these filters to find it, the established workflow that we went over last time is unchanged. So that would be exactly the same as we did it before. Yeah,
okay,
no, that's a good question. It's good to clear that up. So yeah, you would still use this vascular surgery progress note type, and then just like type in this title into the subject, kind of like we went over last time. This is just showing some different ways to actually access that document. Yeah, good question. Okay, nice. So it seems like this, I think, will work for you, which is good. So I'll just get out of this patient. I'll go back to my main testing patient. So yeah, so essentially, Dr. Folds, are you pretty happy with how that kind of workflow works? Will that be helpful for you to be able to see that document and just pull it up in the patient's chart like this?
Totally. Yeah, I think that's really quite helpful. And as I said, this is a very important document for us, so that's great.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so now that we have tackled that, I want to go over that auto text with you. So let's say as part of your assessment, I'm just going to go down and make a free text note here. So it won't pull any templates in. I'm going to use that auto text that we have prototyped for you now, and we can review it together. So I'll just start off with my comma renal code, because that kind of pulls up all of the renal related auto text. We see before we had that renal underscore VA clinic note. That's kind of what we reviewed last time. Now we've configured this new one for you that has some of the updates that we took down from you in the last session. So I'm going to double click, and that's going to generate this auto text. So a few things to note. Basically, it pulls in the patient name, the date. You can just type in your name there. Here, there's a few fields that pull in. So we discussed that referral from field. You can type that in, that reason for referral. So we put in these options that you had asked last time. And I just want to confirm with you, this is what you wanted to see for this field, correct? I think these were the exact options we noted down from last
time. Patient presenting with need for new, I would say patient presenting, need for new vascular access.
Okay, so just add the word vascular in there.
I think so, yeah. Patient
Okay.
presenting with, new arm symptoms. Patient presenting with, the third one doesn't make sense to me. Patient presenting with difficulties. I would change the third one to patient presenting with concerns.
With concerns.
Regarding current AV fistula.
Current, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Patient presenting with concerns
and
regarding
just to clarify, this is a note that actually gets sent to a patient's doctor, because I would never use short forms in a referral note. Like I would always say, there should be proper sentences and that sort of thing, right? Like this is I think if this is actually like a document that we would be sending to another physician, I would expect that it wouldn't have short forms and that sort of thing.
Okay, so essentially you want these options kind of spelled out in full sentences.
Yeah, it would have to be like patient presenting with need for new, AV access, or arteriovenous access, patient presenting with new arm symptoms, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Patient presenting with concerns about pre-existing arteriovenous fistula, and then maturation assessment. That'd be fine.
And then maturation assessment. Okay. And so could you just repeat that? I just want to make sure we note that down,
Sure.
that third one.
Patient presenting with concerns regarding current arteriovenous fistula.
Okay. And actually have it spelled out, not as an abbreviation.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And then obviously with this PT here, you'd want this spelled out as patient as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
And
Brian,
I
did
would,
you-
so I would also have the first one I would change to patient presenting with need for new for new renal access.
renal access. Okay. Renal access. Yeah, that makes sense. Brian, were you able to get those requirements down? We are recording this, so we can always review it after.
Yeah, I got them.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, that sounds good, Dr. Folds. So we'll definitely make those adjustments. I'll just use this one.
Hey, Dr. Foltz.
Mhm.
Oh, never mind. I saw you answered my comment in the chat.
Yeah, I think that was a good suggestion there.
So Jesse, for the third drop down, we just want to make it more generic to say concerns regarding current dialysis access, so that it covers all types, not just the AVFs.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so dialysis access, is that, and would you guys prefer saying dialysis access as opposed to like renal access then?
Yes, I think that's actually a better way of saying it.
Okay, so and that would apply to the first one as well, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay, excellent. Sounds good. So that's great. We know that. This most recent EGFR, this patient just doesn't have any lab stuff available, but if they did have labs documented, this would pull in the most recent, so that should work well. The current access, this is basically would just be a free text field, so you could type in some information. This vascular access history. So we had a few issues with this as we were investigating. I actually went and reviewed some charts in the production domain at St. Paul's just to see how this was being documented on. And I know before we were talking about how it'd be nice to have like a vascular access history that would just pull in all the recent vascular access specific stuff that the patient has done. Unfortunately, that did not really work out. So right now what this is it's just a free text field where you can enter in information. I realize that's not like super useful. So another thing, Zoom thing keeps being in the way. So one thing I just wanted to show is we could simply utilize what was in this note type before, which was the procedure/surgical history, because that does just pull in all the procedures they've had. And as you can see here, it would include the vascular access related procedures here. I know that would also generate some unwanted information. And you were saying before that you want to try and like streamline this as much as possible. So I want to see what you thought of that, Dr. Folds. Basically, the only way to, I guess, pull in the recent vascular access specific procedures would be to do kind of this catch-all component in the note. If we didn't do that, we would just have that vascular access one. But again, it wouldn't actually pull in information. So I'm not sure how helpful that would be for you.
Would it be possible to just have surgical history where it would pull in the names of the surgeries the patient has had before? I think that might be useful. And then we can scan that list and look for the vascular access operative notes.
Right.
Yeah, instead of having every procedure. I mean, because we don't really need to see that they've had a femoral angiogram or a coronary angiogram. That's not really, or the fact that patients had a vitrectomy, that's not all that relevant. But I understand you're saying that it's not possible just to pull in the, or would it be possible to pull in these surgical notes dictated by a vascular surgeon?
Yeah, so Brian, now correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what we were talking about before, it seems like that we wouldn't be able to do that. The only way to do that would be to utilize the tagging function, which is kind of a more manual process. Is that correct, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. And I can show you how that tagging process works, Dr. Folds, but basically it's like a manual process where you'd actually go and find those previous notes and kind of select information and then tag it. And then you can go back to your note that you're documenting on, and you can kind of put that information in your note. But again, it's not, you know, automatic.
Okay.
At least, so.
I guess, you know, what would be useful is if you could have this procedure surgical history, it'd be better to have it. And then it would be quite quick to just go through and delete the ones that aren't relevant to this intervention.
Right.
So I think that'd be the best thing to do it the way you've set up here. And if I don't want the fact that patients had bilateral cataract surgery in my note, I can just delete that quite easily. It's better that than me having to go through and select all the ones I think are relevant. So I think this is actually the right way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind as well. It's much easier to just delete stuff you don't need than it is to go and actually add everything yourself. So that's good for us to know. So Brian, let's note that down. We can basically just remove this vascular access history component and then add in that same procedure / surgical one. So we can have that information. Now, just while we were talking about the tagging function, I kind of want to just quickly show you that, just so you know how it works. So for example, let's say I'm in the patient's M page. Let's say I'm reviewing, let's just go and look at document. Let's say I look at this free text note. And it doesn't really matter for the purpose of it. I'm just going to select any text. So let's just say I find some text that, you know, I want to pull into another note. So basically when you select it, you see this little tag button comes up. So when you click that, essentially it kind of saves that text. And if we go back to our note type that we're currently documenting on, I'm not sure why it didn't show up there.
Do you have to refresh?
Let's see. Be able to try anything here. Let's go to another again. Time. So click tag. Let's just try making a new note. There we go. So yeah, basically this tag text will show up on the side, and you can see since I did it 3 times, it's kind of saved all of them. And then if there's one I want to use, I can just kind of drag it into the note, and then it'll first of all put in the information, and then I'll also put a little reference, and it'll show you know, the actual user that documented the note, which in this case is just a test user. So that can be helpful if you want to kind of find other information, other specific information. So for example, like you said earlier, Dr. Folds, you could in theory go and search through all the patient's previous notes and find the vascular specific ones, and then you could kind of copy that text and tag it. Once again, it's pretty laborious and time consuming. I wouldn't recommend kind of doing it that way, but I did want to just kind of show that functionality just so you're aware of it. But again, I think what we already agreed upon, just changing it with that procedure surgical history, is certainly preferable just for ease of use. So we'll definitely do that. And now we have this next field, dominant arm. So I'm guessing this is fine, right? I think you just
Totally
want to
fine.
have like the left and right. Yeah, that one's more straightforward. And then this fistula type / catheter, we just have these 3 options that we built out. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Now, is there a way to type in, there are a few, or there are rare, but other fistulas that patients can have. So if we didn't want those 3, is it possible just to have it as a manual entry where you could type in, okay, so it seems to work that way. And I would just get rid of the, where it says radiocephalic there.
Yeah, so, oh, I see. So if you didn't want, I thought you meant if you want to like add on some text. No, so if you don't want any text, essentially you can just leave it blank. So you can just not actually click anything. And then you can just click right next to it. And it is like a free text field. So you can just type information there.
Can you go back to the 3 things in the drop-down box again? Could you change that to radiocephalic fistula, brachiocephalic fistula, brachiobasilic fistula, and then have the same things? And then I would also have arteriovenous graft as the fourth thing to add.
Arteriovenous graft. Okay, so have that as the fourth option, and then for everything else, basically just have the same name and then fistula.
That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks
do that.
good. It will just have arteriovenous graft as the other drop down, and then anything that's not one of those four, we'll just type it in. Does that sound okay to you, Thomas?
Well, yeah, as long as you can, I guess, enter the free text and stuff. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to use fistula, or do you want to use the AVF, which was kind of generally used most of the document?
Sure.
And then
Okay, that's fine.
AVF. It doesn't matter really. AVF.
Yeah. And would you want, I know before you were saying you wanted things kind of spelled out and not have the acronym. So would you want AVF as the acronym, or do you want the whole thing actually spelled out?
Just leave it with fistula, actually.
Leave it with fistula? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. That sounds good. And then have that fourth option that we discussed as well. Okay, perfect. So happy with that one. And then we have access type. So here we do have the, I guess the abbreviated forms. We have AVF, AVG, and HD catheter. Did you want these actually spelled out, or did these options suffice?
I would have them spelled out. I mean, for us, we all know what AVF, AVG is, but the family physician would not. So I would say arteriovenous fistula, arteriovenous graft, and hemodialysis catheter.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's definitely doable. So we can certainly modify those to spell it out. And did you want any additional options, or will these three suffice?
I think that's fine. Thomas, would you add anything?
No, I think that's okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Happy. Okay, wonderful. Excellent. And then again, we have a physical exam field, which is just, again, a free text field. There's no predetermined options for it. A most recent vital signs. So again, this test patient doesn't have anything documented, but any recent vital signs documentation would pull into this component. And then the last three, again, are just free text. So your ultrasound assessment, any other relevant investigations, and then the impression and plan. So all those would just be free text, no selectable options. And that is it for that note. So other than those things that we discussed on modifying, how are you feeling about this, Dr. Folds? Do you feel like this will be helpful and it kind of meets the requirements you were looking for?
I think it's really good. I'm quite happy with it. Thomas, would you have any suggestions?
Oh, it looks okay. I think it's all right.
Okay.
It's better than okay, Thomas.
Yeah, show some enthusiasm, Tomas. Come on. Okay, well, that's great. I'm glad that we were able to review this. I think those are some great additions as well. It's good to keep in mind the context that this isn't going to a specialist. So yeah, spelling everything out totally makes sense to me. So we have these requirements down. We'll basically just go back, modify the prototype, and then we'll kind of bring it through the whole build process, because we can essentially consider it validated now. So I will just.
Hey Jesse.
Yep.
I think Flo just mentioned something in the chat there. I'm not sure, Flo, are you still thinking that's a good idea to have promise? I think she was mentioning about the fistula type / catheter section. She mentioned we should add.
I was just thinking if you guys want to add a few more drop down options, like the ones that Promise has, so you don't have to free text stuff as much. I don't know.
So
yeah, I saw that there, Flo. But could you give me an example of what other ones Promise would have?
You have like the brachiobasilic.
That's there. That was part of the drop down.
Like it has like. Yeah. It has
Brachial
things like brachiobasilic, single stage or 2 stages, brachial, single stage, 2 stages. It has a radial basilic transposed or
no
ulnar cephalic for ulnar.
No, so
cephalic.
I'll stop you there. I think the ones we have written down would include, that would kind of capture 80 or 90% of our patients. Mm-hmm. I think the ability to type in anything more creative is fine. So I would just leave it with what we talked about for the drop down box.
Okay,
And then, you know, the 5-10% of patients who have something more unique, we would just type that in. I think that's the best thing to do.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, no, thanks for calling that out, Flo. It's definitely good to compare with what we actually have in Promise. But so it sounds like, Dr. Folds, you're fine with having these three. And then if there are any additional, you know, details related to one of them, you can just free text that. Or if it's not one of these at all, you can just free text the whole thing.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, so I think that is good for our auto text. I'll just quickly assign this note. Okay, so that's great. We've covered that. So those were basically, I mean, honestly, those were the two main aspects that we still kind of needed to validate with you. So that was the bulk of the important content, I guess. Really quickly, what I was going to do is kind of just finish off a relatively faster demo. I'm not going to do too much because, again, Dr. Folds, you mentioned you're pretty familiar with the system, but I did just want to show one more thing that we did for you. So if you go to your outpatient quick orders page, we added that one finger pressure test for you. So if you go to this imaging and diagnostics component here at the bottom, we added this new folder for you, Vascular Lab. And when you open it up, there's just this one little order sitting in here. So that VL resting pressures, arms and fingers. So basically, if you click it, you can order it pretty quickly. You can go up into your little mailbox here. I'll just go modify details so we can see the order. But once again, this is the same one that we kind of went over last time, except now we've actually added it to that quick orders page. So it's just a little bit faster. Select that order and order it.
Okay,
was that location, did that, oh yeah, location. Was that location like okay for you in terms of where it kind of lives on that quick order page? So right here.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great. So yeah, that'll be, and you'll just have to remember that it's the outpatient quick orders tab. There's also a quick orders tab, so it can get a little bit confusing. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that this folder is and this order has been added to the outpatients tab. If you go to the quick orders one, you still have that imaging and diagnostics component, but you don't have that additional folder there. And so on this quick orders tab, this is also where you'd go to, do your surgical ordering. So after you assess the patient, let's say they're ready to go in for their, surgical procedure, you basically go to your power plans, little widget here, open up the preoperative. You could order your AV fistula preoperative power plan. Then you can also go and just order your post-op one. And then once again, just go modify details, and we can see both those power plans. So you can just essentially proceed from there and actually order those in a planned state. And then, the nurses would initiate, et cetera, as part of their workflow. So that was pretty much the bulk of everything I want to go over. Did you have any questions, Dr. Folds, just about any other functionality? Is there anything else you want to see us go over? I tried not to be too detailed with the actual demo portion because you had expressed last time that you've worked at VGH, so you're pretty familiar with the system.
I guess the only other question would be, so this page, say the patient's in front of us and we decide to do that they need a fistula created. So my question just is, how do you put in the pre-op orders and book the case now? Like, that's something I don't have a lot of experience with. So, say we decide that test VGH renal patient needs a left radiocephalic AV fistula. How do I go about booking that?
So good question. I'm just going to get out of here. Actually, I'll just order these. So basically, so what your scenario, what you're talking about is like, let's say you're seeing the patient right now, you've done the assessment, you've looked at that vein mapping file, you've gone and documented your note using your auto text, et cetera. And now the patient is essentially ready to go to surgery to actually get that access point created.
Correct. So typically what we would have them do is sign a consent form for surgery. I would also fill out a MOST questionnaire. And And then I would send a note to my assistant to book the patient in for surgery, or Thomas would keep a list of these patients, and I would then be sent on to OR booking. I'm just wondering what in this case should be done to facilitate that process.
Yeah, good question. So I think the way this workflow would go, just because the way surgery scheduling works is it's all based on a booking package. There's not like an actual order you'd enter into the system necessarily. So basically you would do what you did, that patient consent, you'd fill out that, one-page booking package where you write down what procedure they're getting, fill in that other information, and then essentially that whole booking package would be faxed to the surgery, to OR booking. They would have their own fax number. And again, I haven't been part of surgery design, but I'm guessing they'll have like various queues in that work queue monitor application. So that's basically the application that the clerks monitor for any incoming faxes. Usually, like, for example, a vascular access clinic, it would be referrals coming in that way. But for surgery, for OR booking, that booking package that you fill out would basically be faxed over by a clerk, and then their clerk would be monitoring that queue, and they would see that booking package faxed in, and that would then cause them to start the process. So they'd make the surgery encounter, the pre-day surgery encounter. They would then associate that booking package to the patient's chart, and then they would actually book that case. They'd probably first book it on a wait list, for example, or if there was an actual, OR date, they might just book it immediately with whichever date has been inputted on the booking package. But that would essentially be it. So it'd be a matter of you filling out that booking package, and then it would get faxed to the OR booking department of VGH.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, so another thing that's worth mentioning is, of course, right now, this patient is on this outpatient encounter doing this assessment with you. All of your documentation that you enter, so you might, do some notes, etc. Once the patient is booked for surgery and everything, the surgeon, other physicians could then go and check your documentation, etc. So yeah, but in terms of that workflow, you wouldn't actually have to do anything like in Cerner to start that process. It would just really be you filling out the booking package, and then a clerk would kind of fax it over, and then it would go to OR booking.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's lacking information. Sometimes an ECG is not current and we have to do it. Sometimes a pre-op is not current and we give it to the patient to fill out and give it back to us. In that case, if there's missing information, does it get put into a queue until everything's there and then faxed over to the OR booking?
That's a good question. I think what would happen is, yes, you would basically just hold off. Or, I mean, one thing I've seen a lot that would happen in surgery is, a booking package would be faxed over, but then it would be a bit incomplete. There'd be some information missing. So then they'd have to kind of refax it with the finished information. And then the booking clerk would continue the process. In that scenario you just mentioned though, Sophia, I think probably you guys would just kind of hold on to the booking package until everything was ready. And then you would just kind of fax it over, and then OR booking would take over.
Okay, because at this state, when the vascular surgeon meets with the patient and there's some missing information, I still give the package to his secretary, and they, and if there's lacking information, they hold on to it. So now with this new Cerner, I'm not too sure who would be responsible for that. Would it be me holding on to it until everything's complete and then going to OR booking? Or would it be me still giving it to the secretary of the vascular surgeon and then still submitting? I'm not too sure how this is going to work.
That is a good question. Just trying to think through that scenario. So I guess if you did give it in current state, if you do give it to that secretary and they just hold on to it, do you do anything else after that? Will you kind of provide any more updates to them, or it's kind of off your plate at that point?
No, if there's anything missing, I do follow up with the patient and make sure they have that ECG done, and I make sure that pre-op questionnaire or anything else that's missing, I make sure it's there, and then I give it to the secretary.
Right. I might rely on my team. I think probably you would just kind of hold on to it and wait till everything's ready and then send it over. That's probably what I would suggest, just so we're reducing, like, the number of faxes that go through and that have to be associated to the patient's chart. But I'm
Okay.
open to suggestions if anyone from my team would want to chime in.
So if that's the case, then would it be put into like a queue, another little booklet, or a filing program? And would it give me a list of all the stuff that's still missing information? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. So at that point, you wouldn't really, I don't think you would kind of put it into Cerner. I mean, I guess, you could always fax over what you had and then just basically communicate with the secretary and be like, and then I'll send over the rest of this when it's ready. I have seen that certainly happen before, like on the surgery side. So, I mean, that would be an option if you don't want to, but I would definitely suggest kind of holding on to the booking package until everything is complete, and then sending it all off together.
Okay. Okay.
It's a good question about the flow.
Hey, Jesse,
Anyone
it's
else from the
Marissa.
team? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would like support your suggestion as well. Then that way, Sophia, you're not having to fax multiple
Times.
documents.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So then if you have everything, then you can just do it the one time. So when the booking clerk receives it, it's just in one, like he or she will just see it once versus it being fragmented. So I would agree with Jesse. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think another reason for that too is just the less faxes, the better, right? Because every time you do send in a fax and it gets associated to the patient's chart, it kind of adds to this documentation list. So, it just over time, it just makes it kind of harder to find other things within this list. So I think the less, the less unnecessary items on this list, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very good question though, Sophia.
Okay.
Any other questions about any of the workflows we've reviewed, the vein mapping process, the auto text, anything else anyone has?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Folds. So yeah, that's basically everything I want to go over today. That's great that we have some of those new requirements for the auto text. So we'll be sure to kind of go and update our prototype and then push it through the build process. Other than that, though, I think everything else is ready. I think there was one other quick note I wanted to show in the slide deck. So yeah, this is just kind of reviewing our vein mapping workflow, which we've already done. And this is just a reminder again that the note title, we've agreed on that VGH renal VA mapping. So for Sophia, for you, when you upload that document, this is where you would just kind of type that into the subject line after selecting vascular surgery progress note as the actual note type for that. So we've gone through that workflow. This is just confirming where that order has been added. And then finally, I just wanted to quickly touch on this. So for this line insertion or this hemodialysis catheter removal order, we've basically including that's the St. Paul's location showing there. But the scheduling locations will be as follows. So you'll have the VGH PD unit as an option and then the VGH renal VA location as an option as well. I don't think this is very kind of useful for you to see, Dr. Folds, but we just want to confirm that because this is kind of from our other PD and hemodialysis sessions as well. And yeah, that's everything. So if there are no other questions, looks like we still have 15 minutes of time. So I think we can end a little bit early. Dr. Folds, if there's anything else that comes up, if you kind of realize like, oh, I actually want this included in the auto text or et cetera, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll investigate that. But for now, it sounds like we have all the requirements we need. So we'll just kind of continue on with the build. And yeah, thank you so much again for your participation. That's very helpful. Getting all
just before we go, I'm just going to the chat here now, just to make sure everyone's questions are answered. It looks like Flo, did you have a question an outstanding question about the MOAs or anything?
Oh, I was just wondering if there were plans for the MOAs to also have access to Cerner.
Yeah, we're working on that. So I think they will end up getting Cerner access, just because of the to facilitate the booking patients from the clinic into the OR that probably will need it. So it's something we're working on from our end.
Okay, yeah, because my thought was if they do, then Sophia doesn't really need to fax anything to them. They'll be able to see the documents from Cerner and then print what they need for the OR package.
Okay, we'll have to, I think, just kind of see how that goes with our MOAs getting trained and access and how that's going to work. But we're discussing that with the hospital now.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good question, because I know with each MOA, there's like different levels of access they can get. They can do like view only, or they can actually get access to do some of that work. So yeah, depending on the outcome of that, it might slightly modify the workflow. Usually though, yeah, I think, yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what goes on with that decision. But yeah, thank you. That's a good question, Flo. So know that. Were there any other
thanks very
outstanding
much.
questions? No, I think we're good. Okay, thanks again, Dr. Folds. Feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. And yeah, thanks again for all your time, Tomas, Sophia, and Dr. Folds. Very appreciated.
Thank you for everything. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
All right.